The stars stretched endlessly outside the large windows of the Aurora Seeker, their cold light casting faint reflections on the metallic walls inside. Daniel Hayes, known to most as Danny, leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing screen in front of him. His fingers tapped lightly on the desk as he scrolled through streams of data from their latest mission. The hum of the ship's engines filled the room, a constant reminder of the vast emptiness surrounding them. Danny had been an explorer for nearly 2 decades now, traveling across galaxies and uncovering secrets hidden in the farthest corners of space. He was good at what he did, calm under pressure, quick to solve problems, and always willing to take risks when others hesitated. But tonight, something felt off. Maybe it was the silence that hung over the ship, broken only by the occasional beep of instruments. Or maybe it was the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, like the universe was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. He shook his head, trying to focus. Just tired, he muttered to himself. Before he could return to the data, a sharp alarm pierced the quiet. Red lights flashed across the control panel and a robotic voice announced, "Unidentified object detected. Proximity alert." Danny straightened in his seat, his heart skipping a beat. Unidentified objects were rare this far out in deep space. Most of the time, they turned out to be stray asteroids or debris from old ships. Still, protocol demanded caution. "Computer, display trajectory," Danny said, his voice steady despite the tension building in his chest. On the main screen, a small dot appeared, moving steadily toward the Aurora Seeker. It wasn't drifting aimlessly like a piece of space junk. It was coming directly for them. "What is that thing?" asked Emily, one of the junior crew members who had rushed into the room upon hearing the alarm. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with worry. "I don't know yet," Danny replied, keeping his tone calm. "But we'll find out soon enough." As the object drew closer, details began to emerge. It wasn't natural, it was man-made, or perhaps alien-made. Its sleek design suggested advanced technology, far beyond anything humans had developed. Then, without warning, the object slowed down and docked itself seamlessly with the ship. No explosions, no collisions, just a perfect connection as if it belonged there. Danny exchanged glances with Emily. "That's not normal," she whispered. "No kidding," Danny said, standing up. "Stay here and monitor the systems. I'll go check it out." Grabbing a handheld scanner and a utility belt, Danny made his way to the airlock. By the time he arrived, the rest of the crew had gathered, their faces etched with concern. "What do you think it is?" asked Marcus, the ship's navigator. "I'm about to find out," Danny replied, gripping the handle of the airlock door. With a deep breath, he twisted it open. The hiss of decompressing air greeted him, followed by an eerie silence. As the door swung wide, a figure stepped through. At first, Danny thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Standing before him was a woman with smooth blue skin that shimmered faintly under the dim lights. Her golden eyes glowed with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Her long black hair framed her face, and though her expression was calm, there was an undeniable strength in her presence. For a moment, Danny couldn't speak. Memories flooded back, memories he hadn't thought about in years. "Nira," he finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded slowly. "Hello, Daniel." The crew stared in stunned silence, unsure what to make of the situation. Danny stepped forward, his mind racing. "It's been a long time," he said, his voice steadier now. "Yes, it has," Nira replied, her gaze unwavering. "But I haven't forgotten." Danny frowned. "Forgotten what?" "The debt you owe me," she said simply. "You saved my life once. Now I've come to collect." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. Years ago, during one of his earliest missions, Danny had stumbled upon Nira on a desolate moon. She had been injured, hunted by forces he didn't understand. Against all odds, he had helped her survive, patching her wounds and giving her shelter until she regained her strength. But when duty called, he had left her behind, promising to return someday. That day never came. Now she was here standing in front of him, reminding him of a promise he'd almost forgotten. "What do you want?" Danny asked, his voice tinged with unease. Nira tilted her head slightly, studying him. "There's something I need your help with. Something only you can do." Danny glanced at the crew, who were still watching the exchange with wide eyes. "This isn't the best time," he said cautiously. "It's the only time," Nira countered. "Trust me, Daniel. You won't regret helping me." Her confidence was unsettling, but Danny knew he couldn't ignore her. Whatever she wanted, it was clear she wouldn't leave until she got it. "All right," he said after a pause. "Let's talk somewhere private." Leading her to a smaller chamber away from prying eyes, Danny closed the door behind them. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nira broke the silence. "You left me behind," she said, her voice soft but firm. "Do you remember?" "I remember," Danny admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. "I didn't have a choice. My team needed me." "And I understood that," Nira said. "But I survived because of you. And now I need you again." Danny crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. "What exactly are you asking for?" Nira met, his gaze, her golden eyes gleaming. "There's an artifact, an ancient relic buried deep within the ruins of a lost civilization. It holds immense power, capable of changing the fate of entire worlds. But retrieving it is dangerous. I can't do it alone." Danny's stomach tightened. "Why me? Why now?" "Because you're resourceful," Nira said. "And because you owe me." The weight of her words settled heavily on Danny's shoulders. He owed her. That much was true. But diving headfirst into danger for an artifact he knew nothing about felt reckless even for him. Before he could respond, Nira added, "If you refuse, I'll find someone else. But I'd rather work with someone I trust." Danny sighed, running a hand through his hair. Trust. Was that what this was about? Or was there more to her request than she was letting on? "Give me some time to think," he said finally. Nira nodded. "I'll wait. But don't take too long, Daniel. Time is not on our side." As she turned to leave, Danny called after her. "Why should I believe you? How do I know you're not using me?" Nira stopped, glancing over her shoulder. A faint smile played on her lips. "You'll just have to trust me," she said, "like I trusted you all those years ago." With that, she walked out, leaving Danny alone with his thoughts. The crew waited anxiously for answers, but Danny kept silent. Whatever decision he made, it would change everything. For better or worse, the next morning the Aurora Seeker was abuzz with whispers. Nira's sudden appearance had stirred curiosity and unease among the crew. Some saw her as a mysterious figure who carried secrets from distant worlds, while others viewed her with suspicion, unsure of her true intentions. Danny avoided their questions, retreating to his quarters to think. He sat on the edge of his bunk staring at the floor, replaying Nira's words in his mind. She wanted him to help retrieve an artifact, a relic of immense power buried in alien ruins. It sounded dangerous, almost reckless. Yet, there was something in her voice, a quiet desperation that made him hesitate. He couldn't shake the memory of the last time he'd seen her, weak, injured, and alone on that barren moon. She had trusted him then, and now she was asking for his trust again. Danny knew he couldn't ignore her request. The debt weighed heavily on him, gnawing at his conscience. Still, he needed answers before committing to anything. Pushing himself off the bed, he left his quarters and went in search of Nira. He found her in the observation deck, gazing out at the stars. Her blue skin seemed to glow faintly under the soft lighting, and her golden eyes reflected the endless expanse of space. For a moment, Danny hesitated, unsure how to approach her. Then she turned, sensing his presence. "You decided to talk," she said, her tone calm but expectant. "I need to know more," Danny replied, stepping closer. "What is this artifact? Why do you need it?" Nira sighed, turning back to the window. "It's complicated," she began. "The artifact belongs to my people. or what's left of them. Long ago, we were a powerful civilization, capable of shaping entire star systems. But our greed got the better of us. We created the HFY artifact as a tool to harness energy beyond imagination. At first, it brought prosperity. Then, chaos. Her voice grew softer, tinged with sadness. Wars broke out over control of the artifact. Entire planets were destroyed in the fighting. In the end, my people sealed it away, hoping no one would ever use it again. But now others are searching for it. If they find it, they'll unleash its power, and not for good. Danny listened intently, his brow furrowed. And you want to stop them? Yes, Nira said firmly. But I can't do it alone. Retrieving the artifact requires navigating traps and overcoming dangers I can't face by myself. That's where you come in. Danny crossed his arms, considering her words. Why me? There are others out there. People with more resources, more experience. Nira smiled faintly. Because you're different, Daniel. You've always been willing to take risks for the right reasons. And because... She paused, her gaze meeting his. Because I trust you. Her honesty caught him off guard. He hadn't expected such vulnerability from someone who seemed so strong. Still, doubts lingered in his mind. What happens after we retrieve it? He asked. Do you plan to destroy it? Hide it again? Nira hesitated, her expression unreadable. I haven't decided yet, but I promise you this. I won't let it fall into the wrong hands. Danny studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. He couldn't find one. Finally, he nodded. All right, I'll help you. But if I sense anything suspicious, I'm walking away. Relief flickered across Nira's features. Thank you, Daniel. You won't regret this. The preparations took hours. Nira provided coordinates for the planet where the artifact was hidden, and together, they gathered supplies and equipment. Danny briefed the crew, explaining that he and Nira would be leaving the ship temporarily to investigate a lead on their mission. He kept the details vague, knowing full well that revealing too much might spark panic or resistance. As they boarded, a small shuttlecraft, Danny felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The journey ahead promised danger, but it also offered a chance to uncover answers, to learn more about Nira and the world she came from. The shuttle detached from the Aurora Seeker and soared into the void. Nira sat beside Danny, her hands resting lightly on her lap. For a while, neither spoke, the hum of the engines filling the silence. Finally, Danny broke the quiet. Tell me more about your people, he said. What were they like? Nira glanced at him, a nostalgic smile tugging at her lips. They were brilliant, innovators, dreamers, but they were also flawed, driven by ambition and pride. They believed they could control everything, even forces they didn't fully understand. And you? Danny asked. What happened to you after I left? Pain flashed in her eyes, but she quickly masked it. Survival wasn't easy. After you left, I wandered for years searching for refuge. Eventually, I found allies, others who had lost everything to war and greed. Together, we rebuilt our lives, piecing together fragments of our past. That's how I learned about the artifact. Its existence became a symbol of hope, for redemption, for a second chance. Danny nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Despite her strength, he sensed a deep loneliness in her, a longing for connection. Do you miss them? He asked gently. Your people? Yes, Nira admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Every day. The rest of the journey passed in relative silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When the shuttle finally reached its destination, the sight that greeted them was both breathtaking and eerie. The planet below was shrouded in perpetual twilight, its surface littered with towering structures that resembled jagged teeth piercing the sky. The ruins stretched as far as the eye could see, their dark forms casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls, pulsating with an otherworldly light. This is it, Nira said. her voice filled with awe. The resting place of the artifact. Danny stared out the window, his heart pounding. Looks like we're going to have company, he muttered, pointing at several drones hovering near the ruins. Nira frowned. Security measures. Whoever built this place didn't want intruders. Great, Danny said dryly. Just what we needed. They landed the shuttle a safe distance away and disembarked, armed with scanners and tools. As they approached the ruins, the air grew colder, carrying an unsettling stillness. Every step echoed loudly, as if the planet itself was watching them. This way, Nira said, leading them toward a massive archway adorned with intricate carvings. She pressed her hand against a glowing panel, and the ground trembled slightly as the entrance opened. Inside, the ruins were labyrinthine with narrow corridors branching off in every direction. Strange symbols lined the walls, shifting and changing as they moved deeper. Stay close, Nira warned. These traps are designed to confuse and disorient. Danny nodded, keeping his scanner active. Got it. Let's just hope we don't trigger anything. They continued cautiously, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust covering the floor. After several minutes, they reached a large chamber illuminated by dim, bluish light. In the center stood a pedestal, atop which rested a crystalline orb. That's it, Nira whispered, her eyes widening. The artifact. Before they could move closer, a low rumble shook the room. From the shadows emerged a biomechanical creature, a grotesque fusion of organic flesh and metallic sinew. Its red eyes locked onto them, and it let out a guttural growl. Trouble, Danny muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. Nira stepped forward, her expression grim. We're not leaving without the artifact. The creature lunged, forcing them to scatter. As they fought back, Danny realized this was only the beginning. The ruins held many secrets and many dangers. But as he glanced at Nira, determination burning in her golden eyes, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The creature lunged again, its metallic claws slicing through the air with terrifying speed. Danny barely managed to dodge, rolling to the side as the sharp tips grazed his shoulder. The impact sent a jolt of pain through his body, but he forced himself to stay focused. Nira was already moving, her movements fluid and precise as she activated a device strapped to her wrist. A burst of energy shot out, striking the creature's armored hide. It roared in anger, shaking off the attack like it was nothing more than a nuisance. "Any ideas?" Danny shouted, raising his weapon and firing a few shots. The bullets ricocheted harmlessly off the creature's metallic plating. "We need to find its weak spot," Nira called back, dodging another swipe. She ducked behind a crumbling pillar, her golden eyes scanning the room for an opening. Danny followed her lead, taking cover behind a pile of debris. His mind raced, trying to piece together a plan. The creature was fast, strong, and seemingly indestructible. They needed something smarter, a way to outthink it rather than overpower it. "Look at its joints," Nira yelled suddenly. "The metal seams. They're weaker there." Danny glanced at the creature, noticing the faint lines where the organic flesh merged with the mechanical parts. Those seams glowed faintly, almost like they were powered by some internal energy source. If they could target those areas, maybe they could disable it. "Got it," he replied, adjusting his aim. He fired a concentrated burst at one of the glowing seams near the creature's knee. The shot connected, sending sparks flying. The creature stumbled, letting out a pained screech. "Keep going," Nira urged, tossing him a small explosive charge from her belt. "Use this on the other joint." Danny caught the charge and nodded. Timing his move carefully, he darted out from behind the debris, drawing the creature's attention. Its red eyes locked onto him, and it charged forward with frightening speed. Just as it reached him, Danny threw the explosive at its other leg and dove out of the way. The charge detonated with a deafening blast, severing the limb entirely. The creature collapsed, thrashing wildly as it tried to regain balance. Nira seized the opportunity, sprinting toward it with her energy weapon raised. With a final, powerful blast, she struck the glowing core embedded in its chest. The creature let out one last agonized roar before falling silent, its body dissolving into a pool of molten metal and ash. Breathing heavily, Danny stood up and wiped the sweat from his brow. That was intense. Nira nodded, lowering her weapon. We can't afford to let our guard down. There will be more obstacles ahead. After catching their breath, they turned their attention back to the artifact resting on the pedestal, in the center of the chamber. Up close, it was even more mesmerizing. The crystalline orb pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, casting intricate patterns of light across the walls. Strange symbols etched into its surface seemed to shift and rearrange themselves as if alive. This is it, Nira said, her voice filled with reverence. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers hovering just above the orb. Wait, Danny cautioned, stepping closer. Are you sure it's safe to touch? Nira hesitated, then withdrew her hand. I don't know, but we have no choice. We need to take it with us. Danny frowned. What exactly does it do? You've mentioned its power, but what kind of power are we talking about? Nira sighed, turning to face him. It's hard to explain. My people used it to manipulate energy on a cosmic scale, creating stars, shaping planets, even bending time itself, but such power came at a cost. When misused, it caused destruction beyond imagination. That's why it was sealed away. Danny crossed his arms, his brow furrowed. And now you want to use it again? What makes you think things will turn out differently this time? Nira met his gaze, her expression serious. Because I'm not seeking power for myself. I want to ensure that no one else can misuse it. Whether that means destroying it or hiding it forever, I haven't decided yet. But I won't let it fall into the wrong hands. Danny studied her face, searching for any sign of doubt. He wanted to believe her, but the weight of her words unsettled him. This wasn't just about retrieving an ancient relic. It was about wielding unimaginable power. And power, no matter how noble the intentions, always carried risks. All right, he said finally. Let's grab it and get out of here, but if anything feels off, we stop. Deal? Nira nodded. Deal. Together they approached the pedestal. Nira placed her hands gently around the orb, bracing herself for whatever might happen. As soon as her skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through the room. The glowing symbols on the walls flared brightly, and a low hum filled the air. Visions began to flood their minds, images of vast galaxies forming, civilizations rising and falling, battles fought among the stars. Danny staggered back, overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. What's happening? It's showing us its history, Nira explained, her voice strained. The knowledge of my people, their triumphs, their failures, it's testing us. Danny shook his head, trying to clear the swirling images from his mind. Testing us for what? To see if we're worthy, Nira replied. Her grip tightened on the orb, and the visions grew sharper, more vivid. She saw glimpses of her own past, her struggles, her losses, her determination to rebuild. Then, unexpectedly, she saw flashes of Danny's life too. His early missions, the sacrifices he'd made, the burdens he carried. The connection between them deepened, bridging gaps neither had realized existed. For a moment, they weren't just two individuals working toward a common goal. They were bound by shared experiences, shared pain. Finally, the visions faded, leaving the room eerily quiet. Nira released the orb, her hands trembling slightly. It's done, she said softly. We passed. Danny exhaled sharply, leaning against the pedestal for support. That was a lot. Nira managed a faint smile. You handled it well. Before they could recover fully, a loud rumbling echoed through the chamber. The ground beneath them began to shake, and sections of the ceiling started to crumble. The ruins are collapsing, Danny shouted, grabbing the orb from the pedestal. We need to move. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging falling debris, and navigating the labyrinthine corridors as quickly as they could. The traps that had once slowed them down now seemed trivial compared to the urgency of escaping the crumbling structure. As they neared the entrance, a massive chunk of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their path. Nira cursed under her breath and pulled out her scanner. "There's another way out, a secondary exit nearby. Follow me." She led them through a narrow passage, her movements quick and decisive despite the chaos around them. Finally, they emerged into the open air, stumbling onto the desolate surface of the planet. Behind them, the ruins continued to collapse, sending plumes of dust and smoke into the twilight sky. Danny coughed, brushing dirt from his jacket. "Well, that was fun." Nira chuckled dryly, clutching the orb tightly. "Let's not do it again, anytime soon." As they made their way back to the shuttle, Danny couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. The artifact was in their possession, but its presence felt heavier than ever. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain: the hardest part was yet to come. The shuttle rocked slightly as it lifted off the surface of the planet, leaving behind the crumbling ruins and the chaos they had narrowly escaped. Inside, Danny sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls tightly. His mind was still reeling from everything that had happened, the visions, the collapsing ruins, and the strange energy of the artifact now resting securely in a containment unit at the back of the cabin. Nira sat beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the glowing orb through the small window of the containment unit. She hadn't said much since they left the planet, but the tension in her posture spoke volumes. Something about the artifact troubled her, though she hadn't shared what it was. Danny glanced at her, breaking the silence. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, not looking away from the orb. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "About what?" He pressed gently. Nira hesitated, then sighed. "About the cost," she said quietly. "Every step we take brings us closer to a decision I don't know if I'm ready to make." Danny frowned, turning his attention back to flying the shuttle. "What kind of decision?" "Whether to destroy it or keep it hidden," Nira replied. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge of uncertainty beneath the surface. "Destroying, it would be safer. It would ensure no one could misuse its power again. But hiding it means preserving the knowledge, the legacy of my people. It's a choice between erasing history or risking disaster." Danny didn't respond immediately. He understood the weight of her dilemma, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, something she wasn't saying. "You've been carrying this burden for a long time," he said finally. "Why now? Why come to me after all these years?" Nira turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "Because I knew you'd understand," she said simply. "When I met you on that moon, when you helped me survive, I saw something in you, a willingness to do what's right even when it's hard. I needed someone like that by my side for this." Her words struck a chord deep within him. He remembered the night he found her, injured and desperate, on that desolate moon. She had trusted him then, placing her life in his hands. Now she was trusting him again, this time with something far greater than her survival. "I won't let you down," Danny said firmly. "But you need to trust me too. No secrets." Nira nodded, though her gaze faltered for a moment. "Fair enough." As they approached the Aurora Seeker, the ship's communication system crackled to life. Marcus's voice came through the speakers, tinged with concern. "Danny, is everything all right? We picked up some unusual readings from your location." "We're fine," Danny replied, keeping his tone calm. "Just ran into a few complications, nothing we couldn't handle." There was a pause before Marcus responded. "Understood. Docking bay is clear. See you soon." Danny ended the transmission and exchanged a glance with Nira. "We'll need to keep the artifact under wraps for now," he said. "The crew doesn't need to know about it until we figure out our next move." Nira agreed. "The fewer people involved, the better." They docked the shuttle without incident and made their way to a secure storage room aboard the ship. The artifact was placed in a reinforced container designed to block any energy emissions it might produce. Once it was secured, Danny leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "So, what's the plan?" he asked. Nira paced slowly, her brow furrowed in thought. "First, we analyze it, learn everything we can about how it works, what it's capable of. Then, we decide whether to destroy it or hide it." "And if someone comes looking for it?" Danny countered. "They will," Nira said grimly. "People always come looking for power. That's why we need to stay ahead of them." Before they could discuss further, the ship's alarms blared suddenly, startling them both. Red warning lights flashed across the corridors, and the robotic voice announced, "Unauthorized vessel detected. Proximity alert." Danny cursed under his breath. Not again. They rushed to the bridge where the rest of the crew was already gathered. On the main screen, a sleek, menacing ship loomed nearby, its design unmistakably alien. It matched none of the known factions in the galaxy, suggesting it belonged to someone or something far more advanced. "Who are they?" Emily asked, nervously, her fingers hovering over the console. "I don't know," Danny said, narrowing his eyes. "But they're not here for sightseeing." The ship broadcasted a message, filling the bridge with a distorted metallic voice. "Surrender the artifact. Resistance will result in termination." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They hadn't mentioned the artifact to anyone, which meant only one thing. The newcomers had been tracking Nira. "It's them," Nira said quietly, her jaw tightening. "The faction I told you about. They've been chasing me for years." Danny turned to her sharply. "You didn't think this was worth mentioning earlier?" "There wasn't time," Nira snapped, her voice rising. "And I didn't want to put anyone else in danger." "Well, looks like we're in danger anyway," Marcus muttered, adjusting the ship's defenses. Danny took a deep breath, trying to stay focused. "All right, everyone listen up. We don't engage unless we have to. Our priority is protecting the ship. And ourselves." The enemy vessel fired a warning shot, narrowly missing the Aurora Seeker. The impact shook the ship, sending several crew members stumbling. "They're serious," Emily said, her voice trembling. "Get us out of here," Danny ordered, taking the helm. The engines roared to life as Danny maneuvered the ship away from the hostile vessel. But their pursuers were faster, closing the gap with alarming speed. Laser blasts streaked past, forcing Danny to perform evasive maneuvers that pushed the ship to its limits. "We can't outrun them forever," Marcus shouted, frantically recalibrating the shields. "I know," Danny replied through gritted teeth. "Nira, any ideas?" Nira hesitated, her gaze locked on the artifact's container. Finally, she stepped forward. "We use it." Danny stared at her in disbelief. "Are you crazy? We don't even know how it works." "It's our only chance," Nira insisted. "If we channel its energy into the ship's systems, we can create a diversion, a burst of energy strong enough to disable their weapons." "That's insane," Danny argued. "What if it destroys us instead?" "It won't," Nira said, firmly. "Trust me." Danny hesitated, torn between caution and desperation. The ship rocked violently as another blast struck the hull, nearly breaching the shields. "Do it," he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. Nira moved quickly, opening the containment unit and carefully removing the orb. Its glow intensified as she held it, pulsating in rhythm with her heartbeat. She connected it to the ship's power core using cables and adapters scavenged from the storage room. "What are you doing?" Emily asked, watching nervously. "Redirecting its energy," Nira explained. "It'll overload their systems temporarily, giving us time to escape." As she worked, the artifact emitted a low hum that grew louder and more intense. The ship's lights flickered, and the temperature dropped noticeably. "Is this supposed to happen?" Marcus asked, gripping the edge of the console. "Yes," Nira replied, her voice strained. "Hold on." With a final adjustment, she activated the connection. A surge of energy rippled through the ship, flooding the engines and weapon systems with raw power. Outside, a massive wave of light erupted from the Aurora Seeker, engulfing the enemy vessel. Their pursuers' weapons faltered, and their engines sputtered as the energy disrupted their systems. "Now!" Danny yelled, seizing the opportunity. He piloted the ship into a steep dive, accelerating to maximum speed. Within moments, they were out of range, leaving the disabled vessel far behind. The crew erupted into cheers, relief washing over them. But Danny remained silent, his eyes locked on Nira. She stood motionless, holding the artifact in her hands, her expression unreadable. "What just happened?" he asked, his voice low. Nira looked up at him, her golden eyes filled with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. "We survived," she said simply. "For now." But Danny couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. Using the artifact had saved them, but it had also opened a door, one that might lead to consequences neither of them could predict. The Aurora Seeker drifted silently through the void, its system still recovering from the energy surge caused by the artifact. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the damage, their faces etched with exhaustion and lingering fear. Though they had escaped their pursuers, the tension aboard the ship remained palpable. Danny could feel it in every corner, the weight of what had happened pressing down on everyone. Nira stayed mostly isolated, retreating to a small chamber near the storage room where the artifact was kept. She spent hours studying it, her golden eyes reflecting its faint glow as if searching for answers within its pulsating light. Danny watched her from a distance, his unease growing with each passing hour. Something about her behavior unsettled him, her focus bordering on obsession. Finally, unable to ignore his concerns any longer, he approached her. "Nira," he said softly, stepping into the room. She didn't look up immediately, her attention fixed on the orb. When she finally turned to face him, her expression was calm but distant. "What is it, Daniel?" "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him. "About what happened back there?" Nira sighed, setting the artifact down carefully. "I did what I had to do. It saved us, didn't it?" "That's not the point," Danny replied, his voice firm. "You used it without knowing the full consequences. What if something had gone wrong? What if we hadn't been able to control it?" "But nothing went wrong," Nira countered, her tone sharp. "We're alive because of it. Isn't that enough?" "It's not just about survival," Danny shot back. "Every time we use this thing, we risk more than we realize. You said yourself, it has the power to shape worlds, to destroy entire civilizations. Do you really think we can handle that kind of responsibility?" Nira crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "And who else should handle it? My people created it and they failed. Humanity isn't ready for this kind of power either. If we don't take charge, someone worse will." Danny shook his head, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "That's exactly my point. Maybe no one should have it. Maybe destroying it is the only way to keep it safe." For a moment, Nira didn't respond. Her eyes flickered to the artifact, then back to him. "Destroying it would mean losing everything my people built, their knowledge, their legacy. Is that really what you want?" "I don't know what I want," Danny admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I do know that keeping it feels like playing with fire. Sooner or later, someone's going to get burned." Nira studied him silently, her expression softening slightly. "You're right to be cautious, Daniel. But sometimes caution isn't enough. Sometimes you have to take risks to protect what matters. And sometimes those risks cost too much," Danny said quietly. Before Nira could reply, the ship's alarms blared again, cutting through the quiet. Both of them froze, exchanging a glance before rushing to the bridge. On the main screen, another vessel appeared, a sleek, ominous craft unlike anything they'd seen before. Its design was jagged and asymmetrical, exuding an aura of menace. Unlike the previous attackers, this ship radiated a different kind of threat, one that felt colder, more calculated. "They've found us," Nira whispered, gripping the edge of the console. "How is that even possible?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. "We were so far ahead of them." "They must have tracking technology," Marcus muttered, frantically scanning the ship's systems. "We need to disable it fast." Danny clenched his fists, his mind racing. "Can we outrun them?" "Not a chance," Marcus replied grimly. They're faster, stronger, and better armed. We're sitting ducks. Nira stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. Then we fight. Danny turned to her sharply. With what? Our weapons are useless against them. Not entirely, Nira said, her eyes narrowing. We use the artifact again. This time we aim for their core systems. If we hit hard enough, we can cripple them. No, Danny said firmly. We're not using it again. Every time we tap into its power, we risk losing control. There has to be another way. There isn't, Nira snapped, her patience wearing thin. If we don't act now, they'll tear us apart. The argument hung in the air, tension crackling between them. Before either could speak further, the enemy ship opened fire. A barrage of energy blasts struck the Aurora Seeker, shaking the vessel violently. Alarms screamed as the shields began to falter. We're out of options, Nira shouted over the noise. Trust me, Daniel. Danny hesitated, torn between his instincts and the urgency of the situation. Finally, he nodded reluctantly. Do it. But this is the last time. Nira wasted no time, sprinting to the containment unit and retrieving the artifact. Its glow intensified as she held it, filling the room with an otherworldly light. She connected it to the ship's systems once more, her hands moving with practiced precision. What's the plan? Danny asked, joining her at the console. We overload their engines, Nira explained. It'll destabilize their power core, forcing them to retreat or self-destruct. Sounds risky, Danny muttered. It is, Nira agreed. But it's our only shot. As she activated the connection, the artifact emitted a deep hum that resonated through the ship. The lights dimmed and the temperature dropped sharply. Outside, a massive wave of energy surged toward the enemy vessel, striking it with devastating force. The impact caused their attacker to shudder violently, its weapons falling silent as its systems overloaded. Yes, Marcus exclaimed, punching, the air in triumph. But the victory was short-lived. As the energy dissipated, the artifact's glow began to fade, leaving it dark and inert. Nira stared at it in shock, her hands trembling. What happened? Danny asked, his voice urgent. It's drained, Nira said quietly. The artifact, it's empty. The realization hit them both like a punch to the gut. Without its power, the artifact was little more than a relic, a reminder of what had been lost. Danny placed a hand on Nira's shoulder, his voice gentle. We'll figure this out. Together. Nira nodded, though her expression remained troubled. I hope you're right. Later, as the crew worked to stabilize the ship, Danny found himself alone in the observation deck, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Nira joined him after a while, standing silently beside him. I'm sorry, she said finally, for dragging you into all of this. You didn't drag me, Danny replied. I chose to help, and I don't regret it. Nira smiled faintly, her golden eyes reflecting the starlight. Even after everything? Even after everything, Danny confirmed. But we're not done yet. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. Nira nodded, her gaze softening. Thank you, Daniel, for trusting me. As they stood there side by side, the enormity of their journey settled over them. They had faced impossible odds, made sacrifices, and carried burdens neither had anticipated. But amidst the uncertainty, one truth remained clear. The hardest choices were still ahead. The Aurora Seeker drifted silently through the void, its engines humming softly as the crew worked to repair the damage from their latest encounter. The artifact lay dormant in its containment unit, its once vibrant glow now extinguished. Nira visited it often, sitting quietly beside it as though waiting for some sign of life. But there was none. Whatever power it had held was gone, leaving behind only a cold, lifeless shell. Danny watched her from afar, his heart heavy with unease. He wanted to say something, to offer comfort or reassurance, but he didn't know where to begin. Nira carried herself with quiet dignity, but he could see the cracks forming beneath her composed exterior. The weight of failure, and perhaps regret, was etched into every line of her face. Finally, one evening, he approached her in the observation deck. She stood by the large window, gazing out at the stars. Her blue skin shimmered faintly under the dim lights, and her golden eyes reflected the endless expanse of space. "Hey," Danny said softly, stepping closer. Nira glanced at him, offering a faint smile. "Hey, how are you holding up?" he asked, leaning against the railing beside her. She shrugged, her gaze returning to the stars. "I've been better, but I'll survive." Danny nodded, letting the silence stretch between them for a moment. "You know, we did everything we could. No one could have predicted how things would turn out." "I know," Nira replied, her voice tinged with sadness. "But that doesn't make it easier. My people created this thing, a tool meant to bring hope, and look where it led us. Destruction, chaos, loss. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's safer if the artifact stays dead." Danny frowned, considering her words. "Do you really believe that? Or are you just trying to convince yourself?" Nira hesitated, then sighed. "Both, maybe. It's hard to let go of something so tied to who I am, to who my people were. But holding on, it feels like I'm clinging to a dream that can never come true." Danny reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Nira. Whatever happens next, I'll be here. We'll figure it out together." Her lips curved into a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more than you know." Days passed, and the crew slowly returned to their routines. Repairs were completed, systems restored, and tensions eased. Yet the presence of the artifact lingered over the ship like a shadow. Its emptiness seemed to echo through the corridors, a reminder of the power and peril it represented. 1. Morning. Nira called Danny to the storage room where the artifact was kept. When he arrived, she was standing beside it, her expression resolute. "It's time," she said simply. "Time for what?" Danny asked, frowning. "To move forward," Nira replied. "I can't stay here forever, Daniel. There's still work to do, people who need protection, secrets that deserve uncovering. And I can't keep relying on you to carry this burden with me." Danny's stomach tightened. "Are you saying goodbye?" Nira nodded, her golden eyes meeting his. "Yes. This is where our paths diverge. You've done more than enough already. Now it's my turn to finish what I started." "But where will you go?" Danny asked, his voice tinged with concern. "What about the others? The ones chasing you?" "They'll follow," Nira admitted, "but they won't find me easily, not anymore." "What about the artifact?" Danny pressed. "What happens to it now?" Nira glanced at the inert orb, her expression softening. "It stays with me. Even without its power, it's still a part of my people's legacy, a reminder of what we lost, and what we must protect." Danny hesitated, searching for the right words. "Be careful, okay? Out there, it's dangerous." Nira smiled faintly. "I've always been careful, Daniel. But thank you for everything." Before he could respond, she stepped forward, closing the distance between them. For a brief moment, she rested a hand on his arm, her touch warm despite her cool skin. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, carrying the artifact with her. Later that day, a small shuttlecraft detached from the Aurora Seeker, disappearing into the vastness of space. Danny watched it go from the observation deck, his chest tight with a mix of pride and sorrow. Nira had chosen her path just as he had chosen his. They had helped each other survive, but now it was time to let go. As the shuttle vanished into the distance, Emily approached him, her brow furrowed. "Is she really gone?" Danny nodded, his gaze still fixed on the stars. "Yeah, she's gone." "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" Emily asked quietly. Danny shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe. The universe has a funny way of bringing people back when you least expect it." Emily nodded, falling silent as the two of them stood side by side watching their endless expanse of space. In the days that followed, life aboard the Aurora Seeker returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could be. The crew moved on, focusing on their missions and responsibilities. But Danny couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed within him. Helping Nira hadn't just been about repaying a debt. It had been about rediscovering parts of himself he'd forgotten: courage, compassion, purpose. One night, as he sat alone in the observation deck, he found himself thinking about the choices they had made, the risks they had taken, and the sacrifices they had endured. The artifact may have been powerless now, but its legacy lived on in the lessons it had taught them. Power, no matter how great, was meaningless without responsibility, and trust, no matter how fragile, was the foundation of survival. As he gazed out at the stars, a thought occurred to him, one that brought both peace and resolve. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and often cruel, but it was also full of possibilities, of mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and bonds waiting to be forged. And somewhere out there, Nira was continuing her journey, carrying the weight of her people's history with quiet strength. Danny knew he would never forget her, or the debt they had paid together. With a deep breath, he leaned back in his chair, letting the hum of the ship soothe his thoughts. There were always more stories to tell, more challenges to face. And no matter where the stars took him, he would be ready. For now, though, all he could do was wait and watch.